Hello and welcome everybody to ASCP's podcast, Rxperience. I am your host, Chad Wers, Chief Executive for ASCP, alongside my hosting partner, Tom Hansel, who looks incredibly cold today.
I'm winter ready.
You are winter ready, and we are excited on today's show to talk about what we're going to call the new frontier, which is an Rxperience podcast that will be hosted by some of our most innovative members. And they're with us today, Kevin Walker, who is an innovator in pharmacy and particularly in the technology area, I would say. And he is one of our state representatives for Washington State. And then one of our other innovators who's been very active innovating pharmacy practice in long-term care, Jaron Stout, who is incidentally from Utah. So our Western Front co-hosts for Rxperience. And I think what we want to do is just talk about, let's just talk about the two of you. Like give a little bit of background on who you are, what your career path has been, how you got to where you are today. And then we'll get into how we're going to use that on our podcast and how you guys are going to host. So Kevin, we'll start with you.
Sounds good. So thanks for the intro and for joining this crew. I'm really worried about Tom and those 2 inches of snow coming his way. So I'll try to.
You can tell the three people that are used to the cold.
The National Guard's on its way, Kevin. Don't worry.
Homes and our offices, and then I don't know what's going on down there in North Carolina.
We'll make sure we send a care package for that and just know that you're getting it for sure. So I started out my career, I guess, growing up on the Yakima Indian Reservation. So I'm Native American. You'll notice in my background, I've got Native American artwork and lots of things connecting me back to my cultural roots. And so growing up there, had a lot of experience primarily in the Indian Health Services system. And so with IHS, that's where I kind of cut my teeth in pharmacy, went from there into Washington State University. Usually I will wear my Cougs blazer sometime soon. Very proud Washington State alum. We just got a new football coach, by the way. We need to talk about that sometime. And hopefully the Cougs will be revitalized. But after going to WSU, did a geriatric residency. And that's when I first encountered ASCP, was with a couple mentors of mine. One in particular was Brian Gates. And so went and did a residency with Brian at PVNA, which was a Providence system, a Visiting Nurses Association group, and learned a lot of interesting details that made me think, this is really the right space, and went to my first ASCP conference that year. And interestingly, my path then went into the hospital world and technology right after. I was always very interested in that space, went and became a hospital pharmacy director for a number of years in the critical access settings, and then oversaw a number of clinics and specialty care aspects, then moved into the executive team of a hospital system. And kind of all along the way, I was doing long-term care consulting, mental health consulting, those types of things to keep my teeth sharp in the clinical world. Fast forward a little bit further, and I ended up going into sales. So did sales and marketing for a telepharmacy and pharmacogenomics company, and then shifted, as Tom and I were talking off screen a little bit, into the software technology space. Always interested in kind of seeing, wanting all those clinical bullets to be able to impact patients early. Chad and Tom, Jaron and I have talked about this before. I realized quickly that how that ended up happening was oftentimes through technology and automation. That if we were trying to keep patients safe, we leveraged the technology in order to keep people from doing things they shouldn't be doing inside of health systems, and being able to remind individuals to do the things they needed to do. And so that really attracted me quickly into that side. First went into the hardware side of things, and then helped develop a couple applications, and now primarily work in the health AI space and the safety and efficacy of health AI. CHAI is a group in particular that I'm involved with, which is the Coalition of Health AI, really trying to find a bunch of stakeholders, bring us together. And unsurprisingly to you guys, there's not a lot of pharmacists in that space. So I'm really excited to bring some of that knowledge and information. I'm sure there's lots of other pharmacists out there that are similar to me that love technology, just like I've talked to Tom about, but really trying to help broaden our understanding of what's coming at us as a profession here really soon.
Well, I just have a couple comments on that, just because from an association perspective, one of the things that's always kind of challenging to try to convey to a membership is how all of these pharmacy things are interrelated, and why you can't walk away from any aspect of our profession and think that we're going to solve a problem one way or the other. And I think one example of that is this relentless pursuit of what we would call provider status and the ability for pharmacists to use their clinical functions. Embedded in that is technology. We have to be part of the systems that medical bill, from a healthcare perspective. Even if we were to get something passed and they said, all of a sudden said, hey, pharmacists, you're providers, you can go bill stuff. We have to be sitting at the tables where those billing conversations and those structures take place. So in the background of all these big issues, we're always sort of pushing to make sure pharmacist is sitting at that table, just like you described with AI. Because even though we might not have an instant answer today, at some point we will get that answer, and we have to be locked in, or we're going to have this ceremonial provider status but no ability to really act on it. So I think that's important to point out. The other thing I'll bring up is your Native American background. Just this year, as we sort of pivot to a new administration, and for anybody that doesn't know, all of our bills, like our ECAPS bill and our provider status bill, it all starts over in a new Congress. So we have to go back out, find a new lead for it, have it introduced, and then go pursue Congress to support the new legislation, or the existing legislation, but in the new Congress. And one of the things that we've talked about in pharmacy is the importance of that existing Senator Grassley bill, which is the rural health bill, that really is a better pharmacist provider bill than the ECAPS bill, because it's much broader. Now, it'll say you can only do this in underserved and rural populations, but honestly, if you were to look at the map of the United States, that's a pretty big population and a pretty big area. So just ways of connecting how some of these things are interrelated, and we have to be kind of looking at all of them and paying attention to all of them at the same time, which is challenging. But thanks for that intro.
For sure.
Jaron?
Yeah, I've told my story a lot of times. I think people are probably bored of hearing it. But, I will say that I think I first met Kevin, I think it was 3 years ago, roughly, because we were both trying to do innovative things, and we crossed paths. And when we first connected, he had issues with his phone line connecting, and he kept getting fallen offline, and he was trying to sell me something, so he obviously failed miserably. But no, ever since then we've been good friends, and honestly I had forgotten that ever happened until he brought it up like a year after the fact. But so I've been a consultant now for 12 years. Wait a minute, I think it's 13 almost. So I was originally hired in April 2012 at Senior Care Pharmacy. And I still have the old name tags here decorating my office that I had with that pharmacy. I worked there for 5 years. And I think early in my career, I got good feedback, good rapport, that I was doing a good job. There was lots of good feedback. However, when I showed up to nursing homes, they looked disappointed, and that really impacted me. So I would talk to them. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you looked forward to my visits. And it turns out that they do, but they don't look forward to the huge stack of paperwork, of just busy work I would give them as a consultant. And just knowing that information is kind of what changed the trajectory of my career. I started to take more seriously, how can I simplify their lives? How can I improve what I'm doing? How can I make it a service that is valuable rather than just adding on to their workload? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that our industry focuses extremely heavily on focusing on regulatory coverage and support, when in reality, they probably need a lot more clinical support. And I think we as consultant pharmacists have emphasized regulatory efforts way more than clinical efforts. And when I changed my focus to that, I immediately got much better support from MDs. And then I started to come up with more ideas like collaborative practice agreements. I got approved to start doing it. and then senior care pharmacy sold to another pharmacy. It was a much bigger pharmacy, so any ideas I had were immediately shut down. I realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I wanted to do to innovate and progress with our profession under that umbrella. So I eventually left about a year later, created my own thing. And just by getting rid of sliding scale, helping to improve the medication use on a clinical level, I had medical directors going into facilities where I wasn't at and saying, hey, I got this guy in this other facility who's doing great things. You should hire him as well. And now here I am. I've been self-employed for full-time for about 6 years, actually almost 7. And I have 50% of my state as a consultant. And I will also say that in 2024, I did not acquire any new facilities. However, I hired 2 more pharmacists, and my revenue more than doubled in last year. And that's because I'm diversifying the clinical services that I provide by teaming up with medical directors and lots of other services. So as a result, last year, I actually had one client who didn't pay me for several months, and it was also my largest client. There's no way I would have survived if I hadn't have diversified. And so that's something I want to get more pharmacists on board with and get us all to focus more on these collaborative efforts.
Absolutely.
Man, I really love both of your guys' thought process and approach. And, we all grew up kind of in that generation where, you're, as a pharmacist, you're supposed to dispense a drug. You're supposed to put a drug into a vial and put a label on it. And what we've tried to emphasize on Rxperience, we've tried to bring in different innovators like yourselves and thought leaders like yourselves. But you're living examples of, hey, a pharmacist can help their customers, can help, our healthcare system in multiple different ways. And I'm sure that'll come out over the next several weeks as you guys have a podcast and bring in maybe different guests or just talk amongst yourselves. But the entrepreneur spirit, I think, is alive and well in pharmacy. And there's a lot in long-term care. We talk about a lot of negatives that we can concentrate on with IRA and other regulatory changes. But at the end of the day, our population in geriatrics is growing, and be able to provide more clinical, more innovative, which you said as far as not regulatory, but more creative clinical, Jaron, is really where we need to go as pharmacy and as pharmacy industry. So I commend you both for kind of getting on that cutting edge. Kevin, let me get back to you here for a second. You talked about, I think you called it Coalition of Health AI, but to get a little more kind of detailed on, AI is such a, kind of a fun trigger word. All of a sudden, everyone's got AI, every application's got AI. But the reality of it is AI really has been around in different forms through our GPSs and other things like that. That's where a machine can learn for itself, where a machine could take inputs and can kick out information to kind of do itself. But many people are like, man, AI is going to replace me as a pharmacist, or AI is going to replace me as a job. But let's talk a little bit about generative AI and kind of that tool and how you've been able to see it already.
Yeah, I think that, when we talk about a word like AI that is so encompassing, one, a lot of people don't even agree with what AI means, those 2 letters, right? And so a lot of the healthcare community has moved to augmented intelligence, right? Instead of artificial, that we're trying to augment something or enhance something when it comes to human intelligence. Another key aspect of anyone you talk to in the AI space is going to talk about one particular thing that I think every clinician, every pharmacist listening should know. There's a huge importance of what's called a human in the loop, right? And so that's making sure that the machine learning, the computer vision, the large language models are putting out outputs that are successful for other clinicians and for patients. And so I think that's one piece of when we get wrapped up and worried about the generative AI next push. Can it do some incredible things? Absolutely. Can it make us better at our jobs? I sure hope so. That we're putting a lot of money into it, so it better do so. But with that being said, I think pharmacy needs to position themselves to recognize the exact same thing we did when any clinical decision support engine came out, right? We can end up being the individuals behind a screen just saying, yep, that interaction matters or that doesn't, and then pushing the script across the way. And AI is going to do it better than it's ever been done before, right? Or we can be the individuals that have those intimate conversations with individual patients, with our clinicians, to educate them on what's coming around the pike, validating what that AI is putting out. There's a number of things that are highly necessary for individual clinicians and pharmacy professionals to look at when it comes to AI outputs. It's not something that is a plug it in, pull it out, and now the entire healthcare system is taken care of by any means. But I do think this, Tom, when it comes to some things that go into that AI umbrella, a couple of them include what Chad was talking about before, and ambient listening. We hear a lot about that from the provider side. We don't hear about that from the pharmacy side. And the reason is because we're not documenting. We're not pulling together documentation of our clinical encounters or our encounters with individual clinicians when it comes to referrals. And so having more pharmacists think about how are we going to use these new platforms, these new programs that are being developed, these things that the FDA is already approving, putting it across the line, is an interesting next step for our profession. And I think that, things like digital therapeutics, which we'll have an episode on inside of our podcast, will be really interesting to go, why isn't pharmacy controlling that narrative? And that's probably my biggest push, to be honest. It's selfish, it's self-serving in every way, right? But I truly believe in the health settings I've been in, which I've worked in just about all of them now. There is no one more effective than a pharmacist in understanding a holistic system and how those things are put together. It's a very unique seat to sit in when it comes to healthcare. And so when these new technologies are coming our way, I feel like they've been force-fed right into pharmacy far too often without us being able to dictate and moderate how they're being leveraged. So that's my push, I think, in the AI space, Tom. It's really not a doom and gloom worry about it. It's a, hey, grab a hold of the reins and start driving the horse.
Good.
Yeah, just to follow up on those comments, I think particularly long-term care is in a unique space in with respect to that. I mean, you've got a environment that struggles to staff. You've got an environment that's, without the consultant pharmacist, without the role of pharmacy, doesn't have any expertise in that area. Primary care physicians are dwindling and going away and being consumed by larger systems. So pharmacy really has the opportunity to step into that space, that gap. And you absolutely using every technology available to them, but by the same token, stepping into those gaps and saying, yeah, you know what, medication use and therapeutics have reached a point where you need somebody that's really specialized and tooled at managing medications in this process at the primary care level. And I think that's creating opportunity and will continue to as this population ages and that becomes even more of a focus of healthcare.
Entirely. Yeah,
so Tom, you kind of alluded to it, but these two individuals, innovators, frontiersmen, are going to host the podcast, the Rxperience Podcast. I think we've decided we're going to call it the New Frontier, and they're going to bring in some of the leaders and pharmacists and even outside of pharmacy, people that are looking at pharmacy and saying, hey, we need this expertise in our practice. We need this as part of the care of our patients. And they're going to bring forth all of the aspects around that, the individuals that are doing it, the technologies that are part of it, and really explore that innovative component so that we can share that with other pharmacists and members to stimulate and instigate, a change in practice. So guys,
Jaron, you
comment on that, but why don't you talk about, what your themes and ideas are as this part of our podcast and this part unfolds?
Yeah, I think me and Kevin were talking just yesterday, and I think we want to provide context about how we've gotten where we are, and like Kevin said, I'm not a doom and gloom kind of guy either. I'm more of a let's recognize how we got here, what our opportunities currently are, and let's discuss that with other well-respected colleagues that we all have, and let's identify areas that we can improve and pull our profession into a new trajectory, improved trajectory. Not to say that we're on a bad trajectory right now, but I feel like there's a lot of things we could be doing better clinically and expanding ourselves into new roles to diversify And like you said, like there's a growing gap of primary care, and we are like the most equipped to fill that. And it's also an opportunity for us to prove that we deserve to be there. We don't, rather than just begging and pleading for it, let's just put ourselves out there and let's prove it, and then what, because every physician I work with, as soon as they work with a pharmacist, they never want to go without it again. And that's the key, is we just have to get our foot in the door and start working with these people, and they'll advocate for us.
Yeah, I
Once you
think
go pharmacist, you never go back. Is that what you're saying, Jaron?
That's right.
You got
So
there.
you've been a trailblazer here with incident to billing, and so just for maybe our listeners that heard about it but don't really understand it, and you've created a practice that really excels at it, and I believe this is something that we need to be doing across the nation, not just in Utah. But could you expand a little bit on that just to get everyone kind of up to speed?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, now that I've diversified and I've doubled my revenue without adding any new facilities, and by the way, I'm still only scratching the surface. I need potentially 6 to 8 more pharmacists just to cover all the work that is at my disposal. But I don't have the capital to just go and hire 6 more pharmacists. I've just slowly phased this in. I'm looking to hire one in the next few weeks, maybe 2, and then maybe a few techs. Like, I think over the next year, I hope to double again, maybe 4 pharmacists this year if all goes well. But it's the point being, even without me adding new facilities, and by the way, I may get new facilities, because what I'm focusing on now is working with medical groups that I've already been teamed up with in my own facilities. And now the next step is, okay, you have 30 buildings that I'm not in. So how can I help you in these 30 buildings by doing CCM and by doing BHI services and by doing patient education with incident to visits and annual wellness visits. And so this is going to put me in buildings where I'm not the formal consultant. So that has the potential to grow me more facilities as well, in addition to what I'm already doing. And I'm also trying to team up with a behavioral health provider that's in 8 states. I've been trying to finalize it for about 6 months. I'm hoping it happens here soon. But what this will allow me to do is to go into facilities and say, hey, don't worry about the whole day that you spend just prepping for psychotropic meeting. We're going to do it for you, and we'll do it for the facility for free, because we're going to bill through the medical team to Medicare to provide these services. And so now we're going to take on the full scope of psychotropic management, which also allows us to dedicate time to documentation of justification, contraindications, etc. Like, we're going to do all that work, put it up on steroids, so that they no longer have to worry and refer to us when they need us. Like, we will proactively handle and manage their psychotropic medications and make sure it's appropriate. We'll be like embedded into that team. And so the goal is, I want to make it so that my consultants no longer have to stop at 15 facilities once a month. I want to get it down to 1 facility once a week, or 5 facilities total per consultant, and they go once a week, because they'll have several different services that we'll be providing. They'll be just kind of like a nurse practitioner they'll show up once a day at all their facilities, but the point is, we're going to have an enlarged workforce in a population that truly needs us the most. And I feel like, at least where I'm at in Utah, there's not it doesn't seem like a lot of pharmacy schools are pushing for geriatric pharmacist need, but that's a huge need right now. And it's honestly like a pharmacist's playground. Like, you go in and you assess somebody who's on 25, 30 meds and all their disease states. Like, there's nobody more equipped to do that more than us. And the opportunities are out there, and like I said, like, I'm hoping that we can triple, quadruple the workforce just by diversifying what we do and expanding our opportunities. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's exciting. It certainly is. I think a new way to do it. Maybe not new for you, but I think most of the nation just isn't looking at pharmacists that way. So, congratulations
Right.
on blazing that trail.
Yeah. It always reminds me of well, everything reminds me of Star Wars at some level. But that scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi says, these aren't the droids you're looking for. I always think of provider status when I see that scene, because provider status is there. It's already there. It's already out there. There's already opportunities for it. It's not packaged nice and neat in a piece of legislation that feels validating and ceremonial, but it's already out there. And what Jaron is doing and what other pharmacists around the country are doing with respect to billing is provider status. And we have to start thinking, just like anybody in business, that where are our lines of revenue and where can we deliver on those lines of revenue? So maybe 50 years ago, when this organization was just starting and long-term care and nursing homes were just getting started, the one line of revenue was, how do you deliver drugs and package drugs? Well, now there's all kinds of ways that pharmacists and pharmacies can generate revenue from these patient care relationships. And the consultant pharmacist of today and tomorrow is the one that's thinking like Jaron and saying, okay, yeah, I've got to be here to make sure this nursing home stores and handles medications correctly. That's one line. That may be what we would have considered traditional consulting pharmacy 25 years ago. We're going to check your med carts. We're going to do those kinds of things. Two is those clinical functions that have some sort of regulatory aspect. And maybe those are closely packaged together. Three, you've got what Jaron said, the CMR. Four, you've got MTM. Five, you've got incident to billing, where you've built strong relationships with medical directors. I think there's more out there. I think there are certainly opportunities for medical directors and consultant pharmacists to join forces and say, the medical direction of this facility is going to go through, Dr. Johnson, but Dr. Johnson isn't just a person, he's a team. And he's got, a consultant pharmacist that works with him. And as Jaron mentions, handles all of the psych issues that nursing facility might have. And now you're looking at your invoicing or your revenue each month as a pharmacist and saying, I've got 7 different ways I'm generating income. And in total, it's providing a practice for me. And ultimately, what I'm doing is being a provider. And again, all those things aside, we look forward to legislative efforts that make it easier for pharmacists to engage those billing practices. But in the meantime, they're out there and they can be demonstrated, and they become the support for when you're talking to Congress about provider status. You say, look, Jaron's out there doing this every day, and these are the kinds of outcomes he's getting and care he's providing. All we're asking is you make that easier for other pharmacists to do and easier for Jaron to do. So that's what I think is on the horizon.
Absolutely. That's exciting.
Yeah. I think that new frontier piece that you mentioned with the show is really interesting, what you just were talking about there, Jaron. There's so much hyperbole. There is an echo chamber that's been just drowning pharmacy for so long. And I feel like this is a real great chance for just us to blow that up, right? An ability for us to be able to look at what is possible, what is currently being done, how do we be able to mimic that and leverage it across multiple settings, and then have pharmacy actually grasp what's happening in the future rather than just trying to grab what we used to have, right?
Right.
And there's some aspects, I think, in the billing world that Jaron mentioned that, we'll get really raw into, that there's not great margins. There's a lot of other providers trying to go away from it. There's other individuals that are cheaper than pharmacists that can do it and bill for it at the exact same rates and be able to benefit a facility more financially, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you combat those things? How do you make sure that the quality metrics are connected to what you're doing? How do you make the dollars and cents, the ROI that you mentioned, Chad, all fill in to say the pharmacist is the best choice here? And then for ASCP to be able to beat that drum when it comes to us looking at legislation and policy to say, here's all the reasons why. I'm tired of seeing another study come out to say pharmacists do this great. Another study to come out to say that the metrics show that pharmacists are the best people to do this role. Well, guess what? You're not paying us to do it, right? Overall.
Yeah.
And so I think without really looking at what's technology in play? What's the clinical advantage that we can have? How do we leverage that and be able to scale it appropriately? We can't have real conversations with congressmen, and I'm sure, Chad, you've wanted that for a really long time. And I'm hopeful that we can pull some of those individuals together inside of the show that really have not been a part of ASCP previously, right? We're bringing in individuals that are some fresh blood, some new perspectives to be able to say, hey, here's what's happening on the outside world. I'm not sure what the pharmacy world is saying. And then bring the other individuals in that have been with ASCP forever and say, here's how I've evolved. And so I'm excited about those two things kind of coming together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, our industry is a little bit at an apex, isn't it? We again, for decades and decades, were the ones that put the pills in the bottle, and we had the hometown pharmacist that was the kind of the doctor, and they came, and that's merged over to more of a central fill and more of a production manufacturing type of situation. And again, we can sit there and live in our fears of technology and AI and other things are going to replace us, but Jaron's leading. And his group is kind of leading that over to more of the clinical. Yes, consultants been around, but we've been more, like you said, regulatory. And so it's exciting to be, at this time in our industry. And I think our responsibility is really, and I talk about this a lot, it's that next generation of pharmacists, not necessarily my kids, but my kids' kids. And, when pharmacists look to see, hey, what is my job as a pharmacist? Is it to put pills in a bottle? Is it to, just make sure that this, nursing home is storing correctly? Or are we actually part of the healthcare system where we're the first line helping patients in rural areas doing that clinical assessment? And so I think it's exciting. And I'm really looking forward to kind of what you guys are going to be talking about and the guests you're going to have on.
Absolutely. I'd also say, and notwithstanding all of the technology and artificial and augmented intelligence that's coming and being developed as we speak as a component of that. And I'll think back to, the opportunity for some of us at ASCP to go to Poland this past September and being struck by the fact that in their nursing facilities, their technology and their patient profiles of medications was literally limited to an invoice. Like that's the level of patient profile that exists in that country in terms of what medications you're on. And talking through the fact of how valuable it would be for their pharmacist to simply write down all of the medications, put them into a software system that could do things as basic as a drug interaction check to start the process of medication management, and recognize how different that is over here in the United States. And I'm not suggesting that, Poland is backward or, their healthcare system is devoid of any value, but it's just the difference in an understanding is from a clinical level. They will be considered heroic for simply getting that medication sort of documented and doing some of the things that we would say are the most basic things in medication management that are, wildly automated today in our different pharmacies. But by the same token, that same aspect of pharmacy is playing out over here. It's just playing out in augmented, intelligence. And that's a whole nother step, but it's how does Jaron go in? How does he use AI and technology to triage all of those opportunities that he has to create better care for patients and billing opportunities for his pharmacists? I mean, that's another level, but it's almost like the same step. Like, how do we have this great information systems out there that really don't talk to each other, but if that pharmacist can bring them together and use it to amplify their practice, man, what a valuable service that would be, and what impact that could have on the lives of individuals in terms of how they're cared for. So I think that's exciting. Sorry, that was a long diatribe, wasn't it? Anyway.
No, that was great.
That was good. I loved it, even on the golden mic. I mean, I think that was
right.
Just dropping the awesome. It's fun to think of the chat. I think that in 5 years, that Poland experience will be us reflecting back on what we were doing. Right. In 5 years, we'll look and go, oh wow, that's how we were doing it before, and now it's evolved. And so I think that 5 years is going to go by in blur. and for us to be able to do advanced billing practices. And I mean, for me, it's all cash-based billing when I'm doing anything clinically, because I really don't want to deal with everything in between. I want to choose the patients I want to work with, right? And so there's ways to be able to do each one of those today, but I'm sure in 5 years we'll have a good laugh and thinking that was the way we practiced medicine at that time. And the evolution will happen before we're ready for it. So I think it's a good time to be able to jump on the horse. And, growing up in the country, I got to have as many horse-related analogies as possible. Saddle and horses. We're a new frontier podcast. So I'm going to embrace it, buddy. I might wear a cowboy hat during our first.
I think that's perfect. It would be better than Tom's knit hat.
Hey, we've got 2 inches of snow coming down here. I've got to be prepared.
And I think I also speak for Kevin. I say we appreciate the opportunity that you guys are giving us to be a part of your podcast. Just once a month, kind of taking an episode, and you guys are obviously way older and obviously much more wise, of course, but
wiser.
Really lucky to have this opportunity for you guys to pass the mic to us. In fact, that reminds me of a quote from the Beastie Boys.
Oh boy!
My little Bible here, and there's part where they say, "And now it's time to pass the mic to my brother Mike D with a fistful of truth." And so I hope that's how you guys feel. You're handing it over to us younger, much more energetic guys, much more handsome, but still very respected.
Such compliments at the end of this podcast.
And there goes our viewership, Chad. It's on the way down now. So
we really appreciate you guys.
Amen. No, I think this is going to be great. And it's not so much you guys taking the mic from us; it's you guys speaking to our membership. I mean, they need conduits and pathways into some of the things that are going around the country that just aren't widely known. I mean, there are so many pharmacists doing great things, and when you're on that innovative leading edge, you're focused on your business, you're focused on your practice. You're not sitting there going, I wonder how I can tell everybody else about this. Just not right. That's not what entrepreneurs do. You have to bring them into the light and have them share what they're doing, and they're happy to do it. But they're grinding, focusing on things better. And that's the same. By the same token, that's what's so important at the government level, because we're not out there working going, I can't wait to do this so that I can prove to Congress what a great value it is. It's not why we do it. We do it to take care of patients, but we need to get those stories back to Congress so that they can recognize it. So
it is about inspiring, the pharmacies out there, and they could be as old as us and still be practicing pharmacy, but be inspired to take on that next challenge. And, there's a lot of reasons to have fear and concern. There's a lot of regulatory changes and reimbursement changes. And I hear all that negative everywhere we go. And many conferences last couple years have not been very fun. A lot of people getting up, talking and saying, yeah, this is the reality of what we're dealing with. And so I think just that inspiration of, hey, there's other ways that we can use our backgrounds and use our expertise, and pharmacists need to be more involved in the healthcare system. And so, any way that we can reach, a larger audience, that West Coast audience a little bit more, and any way that we can reach a larger group and inspire that generation of next generation of pharmacists. We've done a pretty good job of bringing on what we call pillars of industry. We brought on several people that have started long-term care pharmacy or started Guardian Pharmacy back in the day. And this wasn't 50 years ago, like Coca-Cola started 150 years ago. They did this 15 years ago, and they're spread across the nation. They're helping tens of thousands of patients. So the reality of it is with technology, with inspiration and entrepreneurship, I believe there could be many Jarons and Kevins across the world, across America, that is really starting out today and 5-10 years from now have got quite a lot of patients they're taking care of, and other people that you'll bring on to kind of show that example. So I think it's exciting and very inspirational.
Yeah.
I appreciate
that. Gentlemen, thank you. We're excited about Rxperience, the New Frontier podcast that'll be coming out soon. Everybody will see that promo. And certainly we hope everybody continues to watch and listen to the ASCP Rxperience podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you both.